Over the course of 1936, many changes came upon the world. Many democratic regimes were born, either via revolution or peaceful concession. England became a democracy, as well as France, the Kassim Republic, Deccan, and the Republic of Kenya, which was once Kilwa, Nikor, Valois, and Malaya being the most prominent new democracies. Communism had also taken its toll, adding Mongolia in the form of the Khalkha proletariat. Radical anarcho-capitalists had even had their day in Jared in North Africa. Fascism, however, had seen its own explosive proliferation. JB Sanma, which was once Qinghai, Scandinavia, Japan, Brazil, and a smattering of small Eastern European states, including Easterly Wallachia, Ansbach, and Phalangist Poland, all joined the ranks of fascism. Legionary Romania, emerging from the Fifth National Council under General Sergiu Cristecu, turned its often external efforts inward. Cristecu focused on modernizing the country's industry, streamlining the military, and dealing with the undesirable question. On the 5th of January, Scandinavia fell into civil war between democratic Scandinavia and the fascist ruling state. Later that same month, fascist China rebelled against absolutist China. This time would prove rife with civil conflicts, as Mongolia, Jaunpur, Osage, Armeniakan, and many others entered into civil war. By March, absolutist China won its civil war. By June, General Cristecu began to send agents to the Papal States with the goal of clandestinely boosting support for the fascist element there. The same was done on Valois. On the 17th of January 1937, fascist Scandinavia was annexed by democratic Scandinavia, further isolating Romania from the rest of the world. General Cristecu realized that his isolated system would fail him, and that in order to attain a geopolitical stability, he would need to first attain allies. He put plans in motion to annex the other small fascist states of Europe in a kind of voluntary fashion, persuaded along ideological lines. He also began drawing up plans for a full-scale invasion of Wallachia, taking the regions of Siberia, Temesvar, Slavonia, and Croatia from the rule of communist dictator Ion Grigorescu. In the meantime, however, he started to discuss with the government ways of thinning out the crowded ghettos, especially when all the new undesirables come with the acquisition of Wallachian territory. Deportation was out of the question, as they would work with Romania's enemies, but ideas about turning the ghettos into open-air prisons or harsh slave labor centers began to gain traction in the heads of the more economically minded ministers. On the 7th of December 1937, Zaporozhye was welcomed into a union with Romania as brothers in fascism. Next, Cristecu began to focus his efforts on persuading the far larger state of Riga to do the same. Riga accepted on the 14th of February 1938, nearly doubling the size of Romania and giving Romanian industry much-needed room for development. Sweden joined on the 25th of April. On the 13th of June, two Romanian-backed coups broke out in Valois and the Papal States, and Romania declared war on Wallachia. It was a momentous day for the Romanian people. 66 Romanian divisions invaded, while 308 Romanian fighters provided air superiority, the first major time that Romania utilized planes in a major war. The Wallachians were scarcely ready, with their 30 divisions and essentially neutered air force that couldn't contend with Romanian air superiority. This was essentially 476,000 men advancing against 197,000. This also makes it the largest military operation attempted by any country in European history. In a surprising move, Mazandaran, a staunchly anti-communist, absolutist regime, sent two divisions and their air wings to aid in the war effort. It would seem their hatred for the Reds was greater than their disdain for the fascist legions. By July, it was clear that the Wallachians had been preparing for such an assault. They were firmly entrenched, and when the infantry made their first combat encounters, the losses were wildly disproportionate. By this point in the war, Romania had lost 51,000 men already, while the Wallachians sat firmly in their bunkers, only having lost 9,300 men. On the 4th of August, democratic Valois prevailed, and the coup had failed. In the meantime, southwestern territory on the Adriatic Sea was demanded from Ansbach on the pains of war, and they ceded it to Romania, including their capital, which they were forced to move as a result. On the 2nd of November, the northernmost portion of Wallachia was conquered, but that caused the rest of their forces to surge out from the middle, even making advances towards Târgu, the administrative capital of Romania. On Christmas Day, however, a breakthrough was made. In a desperate push, several thousand men were taken off their battle plans and told to brutally assault a single point in the south, with the intent of punching a hole in their trench systems. 15 divisions stormed that single point, manned by 5 divisions, and after hundreds of deaths, they were able to swarm over their defensive position and get at the undefended Wallachian interior. Other divisions were given the same seemingly suicidal command, but followed to the letter as loyal soldiers. On the 2nd of February 1939, the fascist coup in the Papal States was lost as well. On the 29th of March, another miracle came through in the Second Romano-Wallachian War, that being the declaration of war by the Papal States against Wallachia in their own separate war for the rest of the Croatian coast. This caused a general rout, as a two-front war was untenable given their manpower, and soon their defensive collapsed entirely. The Treaty of Budapest was signed on the 31st of March after 1 million dead, over half of them Romanian. The treaty resulted in the annexation of the northern three-quarters of Wallachia and turning the Grecian section into a puppet collaborationist government under Jacob Lavari. The communist chairman, Ion Grigorescu, was drowned in the Black Sea. Cheating the Papal States out of their conquest soured relations between the two countries, but a temporary non-aggression pact was ultimately signed as an amendment to the Treaty of Budapest. Millions more had to get the Stăia-Strina, and as such, millions more had to be packed into the ghettos. The government was forced to come up with a solution to such an issue, and they concocted a dark innovation indeed, one soaked with blood. 3 cities in the east were able to be emptied and turned into tabere industriale, meaning industrial camps, called taberin as a common contraction. Kursk would be emptied and used for amesticati. Poltava would be emptied and used for gypsies. Koristan would be emptied and used for everyone else, from political prisoners to heretics to degenerates. Each taberin would serve 3 purposes: slave labor, institutional punishment, and general extermination. Those sent to the 3 taberin would be first physically punished for their crimes, forced to work, and upon their cessation of useful labor, would be dispatched in a variety of ways. Of course, this operation was to remain secret, most of all from the everyday Romanian people. As such, the manamorti were employed in the execution of such a task. Every few months, they would come to Siebenbürgen ghettos and take roughly 5,000 people away to the taberin by truck. Legionary Romania was ascendant and was able to realize its vision of Romania to the darkest and cruelest degree as a result. General Cristecu renamed the army after the brutal fighting of the Second Romano-Wallachian War, officially naming them the Iron Legion. On the 18th of April, the Republic of Bavaria under Consul Ernst Wagner declared war upon the Papal States under Pope Frances Jezeguel. Around June, the government began to employ a wide range of tactics to recover from the devastation of the recent war, as well as to make the refreshed divisions more effective in future conflicts. The government pursued a policy of mass action when it came to military affairs, especially offensives. Despite pioneering the tank, the brass preferred to arm as many people as possible, as quickly as possible, and overwhelm the enemy rather than wasting time and resources on the best machinery available. The government had a secret, however. Long ago, the people who lived in Romania were called Dacians, and they worshipped a large pantheon of gods. One of these gods was named Zalmoxis, and he was the god of death and lord of the underworld. He was also the chief god of the pantheon. The government was funneling a great deal of resources into what had been called the Zalmoxis experiment. The Zalmoxis experiment was born from the notion that the splitting of the atom could unleash untold power and destruction. Theoretically, whoever could harness that power would essentially be unrivaled in their destructive capability. Now, at this point in time, all of that was highly experimental and incredibly theoretical, but the Iron Guard government believed it could will it into reality if they threw enough money behind it. As such, the public image of mass action military doctrine was in fact to save materials for this secret project.